Last year I harvested some Fuggles hops from my garden and dried them, bagged them and froze them, and this year I'm going to brew with them for the first time. No idea of the quality of my hops, so rather than doing an all grain brew, I'm just going to see what the flavour of the hops is like by sticking them into a beer kit as late hops. I'm going to use a Cooper's Canadian Blonde, which has past its best, so I've bought some newer yeast within its date, and I'm going to add Cooper's Brew Enhancer, the Brew Enhancer number 2. So it shouldn't have too heavy a malt body, so I'm hoping that the majority of the flavour are going to come from those late hops. The Fuggles that I'm going to add, what would have been at the end of the boil, obviously the kit is pre-hopped, so I'm going to steep them for about 15 minutes, the equivalent of putting your hops in right at the end of the boil, and we see how it goes. This time I'm going to vary slightly from what I have done in the past. Usually I've been a bit blasé about my water treatment. This time I'm going to, even though I'm not brewing all grain, and obviously lots of the salts are important for the processes of all grain brewing when you're mashing, but this time I'm going to take care to get rid of the chlorine from my tap water. I'm assuming that the water authorities have added chloramine, so instead of just boiling, I'm going to get rid of the chlorine by adding a quarter of a Camden tablet crushed up and agitating the solution and allowing the chlorine to pretty much instantaneously disperse. And then that brewing water I'm going to put into a large vessel, a big stock pot, and heat that up. Dissolve the brew enhancer, which is essentially just sugars, and some of which are from malt extract. Then I shall add my hops. So about 14 to 15 grams added just before this comes to the boil. Boil for 15 minutes. And the last 15 grams of hops in at flame out and left to steep for 15 minutes. Then we can add the contents of the beer kit, make up to the final solution with the rest of the water which I've treated, and then if it's at the right temperature we can aerate that wort and add the yeast. To cool this down, I've put the big stock pot in a sink of cold water, and I'm going to stir that until it cools. I'll have to periodically change the water, because obviously the cold water on the outside is going to warm up as this cools down with the heat exchange. Or you can just keep the cold water running and overflowing. Another method of cooling down the wort just involves buying more equipment. You can buy some form of heat exchanger, or in its cheapest form to buy pre-made, or you could even make yourself out of copper piping, is an immersion chiller, where you immerse coils of copper piping within the hot wort and run cold water through the copper piping. And now that moderately cooled wort now added to the cold water, which again was pre-treated to remove chlorine, we now, as ever, aerate the wort. And add our sachet of brewing yeast. This one just within date is a Mangrove Jack's Craft Series M84 Bohemian Lager. So we've got a right old mishmash of ingredients. A Canadian blonde Cooper's kit, brewed with a lager yeast, and late hopped with Fuggles. Then I'm going to loosely cover that and leave it in a place that's not too warm and not too cold. I'm not precise about these things, and particularly with this yeast, it's best fermented quite low, between 10 and 14 degrees, which is quite attainable early spring in the UK.